I wanted to open up the conversation about how women are seen, valued, and made to feel in pop culture and their professional working industries.
Shout out to the women of the world, bounce your necks.
As a woman, have you ever experienced gender discrimination within your professional industries?
Absolutely, in the music industry. I would say in my platform, which you could call coaching business or mentoring, I give talks and I run programs in the platform, as you know, which I love. It's just an extraordinary thing to be able to do. I can't say that I experience it. In the music industry, however, it's like you've opened up a can of worms. And that for me feels both about gender discrimination regarding ageism, so about like lying if you're in your late 20s, early 30s, or whatever you might be, even beyond. Hopefully there's musicians at all ages, but feeling particularly women like they have to lie about their age or be younger to be lovable. The other thing is around beauty standards and this like patriarchal thing of like you being thin and pretty in order to succeed in music. But the other thing is I've had a couple of experiences, which I would wish on no one, of feeling unsafe in a studio and kind of plied with alcohol, particularly when I started, which is a couple of years back now, and I was obviously younger, of feeling that I needed to drink in order to be the cool one, to fit in. And I've got to say, I felt unsafe. And if I was to go back to that moment, it was in New York, actually, I would just whip that young girl out of there and just say, do you know what, you don't need to do it like that in order to be accepted by the producers.
You're not the first person who I've had this conversation with. I recently spoke to another female artist who was in a situation in London with a very high-end radio station that we all know very well, with a very well-known, famous, successful presenter. And she was sexually assaulted and also, plied with alcohol, and kind of groomed and coerced into behaving a certain way in the session. So you are the first that's brought this to me.
And I feel so sad when I hear that. And the problem was mine was very similar. It's like you've just described me, but not in the radio station, a famous record producer's penthouse studio in New York in the Lower East Side, in Union Square it was actually. And what it makes me feel is how nuanced music relationships are, particularly if the woman singer and the man is the producer. I'm not always blaming the men, but that sense of we got to look and be a certain way. We've got to drink. We've got to be sitting on that lovely sofa. And there's just something about that just to me feels why it feels so nuanced is there's parts in us, and this is why younger singers are more manipulated than older singers. There's parts in us that so want the success or the fame or the money that it's kind of like at all cost. Oh, do you know what? Fuck it, I'll sleep with him. Or do you know what? Fuck it, I'll have that drink or have that line of whatever. And it's like the younger, I'm not saying that I've done this, but the environment and the people's stories that I've heard and my experience of feeling unsafe is like the only reason I was unsafe is because I was drinking, and I now don't drink in any studio, even if they're awesome. And I felt unsafe because I felt like I could have been taken advantage of, which I was to some extent, although it's not as bad as some people's. And I was taken advantage of because there was this part of me that so wanted to please him. And I wanted to please him because he had the Grammys and I didn't. I was starting out, and I still don't, but one day. And he had, the big name and the association with X, Y, and Z. And for me, I'm not making excuses for them because it's not on and it's not acceptable. But for me, I understand why women, I was going to say of a certain age, but actually you don't have to be young. It could just be that you're hungry, so badly want to be accepted that they go, yeah, fuck it, I'll drink. They don't even think about it. Yeah, I'll drink, I'll do this, I'll do that. I'll even be really flirtatious. And actually you don't want to do that. You want to make a frigging great record. You want to be seen and heard. You don't want to be manipulated, and you want to be respected, and for both of you to love the outcome of this record. But everything else feels, in the music industry, sometimes it can feel like so complicated about relationships and likability and how cool you are or what you've said or how many streams or how many Grammys. And it's like, let's just get back to basics, which is we need to make a record, and let's do it not in an environment where there's a sleazy energy or this sexual undertone or this you better drink in order to fit in vibe. And actually, let's just be professional and focus on the record. And I feel like you would not, no one would get away with that. You would not get away with that with me now because I'm experienced and older and I know myself. But my younger self, let's say 5 to 6 years ago when I was starting, there was just a couple of things that if I was my own mother, I would be like, I'm pulling her out, And you end up, you know this, Millie, from your work, you end up at a lot of home studios as well, even with very successful like Grammy winners. They're not always in a commercial space. And again, that's okay. But again, you know, you got to trust where your manager sent you, because you can be vulnerable.
Yeah, I feel like there's a definite power balance, because I feel like a lot of these producers are approaching artists, particularly young artists, knowing that they've got something weighty to offer them in terms of their career development. And that young artist is so kind of bowled over by the fact that they kind of made to feel chosen, like
That's right.
special, like, you know, you've been chosen because you're so whatever.
That's right.
And yeah, I think that as women, we can often be very polite and accommodating. And I think we do that in those sessions. Like when I was younger, I definitely played the more flirtatious role. And I'm not like that, you know, by character normally. But I think in that environment, I felt like that was the role I needed to play to kind of be better received, you know, because I'm in a room full of guys. And we're wired, aren't we, through growing up to be, if we're pretty and we, you know, we're accommodating and we're flirtatious and we're funny and we're entertaining, that we're going to be well received.
That's right. And I think there's another thing when you said about being the chosen one. And, you know, I'm so upset. I mean, this is what I teach in my Icon program and in my talks and all my platform, is the self-worth piece. And I'm not saying that everyone's had as much trauma as I, or had as low self-worth as I did when I started music, but just in general, in my early years. But what I will say is there's something about creativity that is obviously bred from trauma and bred from people that have had hard times, hence them being such brilliant, you know, I'm not saying you have to have it, but brilliant creatives, because you've had so much hardship or challenges that you're kind of this vessel for human emotion and human experience. But what I am saying is, regardless of your upbringing or your experience or background, if you've got even slightly low self-worth, which, let's face it, you know, a lot of us do, and you think, oh, I've been chosen or whatever, you're going to do the thing, whether it's the sex, the drink, the drugs, the whatever, you're going to do the thing unconsciously, because it's like, I can't believe that they see something in me. I can't believe that they think I'm talented. And when I was younger, because I was always told I couldn't sing, and if you know my story, and then I was discovered not till the late age of 25 by this famous band, 07, Massive Attack, that kind of scene. And then the rest is history. Because I was told I couldn't sing, I kept being like, God, I can't believe 07 would want to work with me. And then I got sent to New York, and that kind of episode happened. I can't believe that Thingy's team would want to work with me. And rather than now, which is the confidence of going, I know I add value. And I think that's the thing about like experience in an industry, plus getting older, plus knowing that you add value and that you're worthy. But I think when you're younger, and this is the thing about being a young singer on a sofa with a man that hasn't done therapy or hasn't sorted out his ego, is you end up being, like you said, flirtatious in your circumstance, or in my circumstance, just basically doing what it is that they want to do, because the self-worth wasn't really there, if that makes sense.
So at the time when you were in that situation, were you aware of the manipulation? Or were you just kind of in the moment thinking, oh, we're having fun, this is how it should be?
The main event, I mean, I've had lots of experiences, but the main event where I'm like, I would not want that to happen to everyone with this drink and stuff, with this guy in the drink in New York. I knew he's got a bit of a rep, so I kind of knew what I was getting in for, but he's so famous and so successful that I kind of, and my manager agreed, we're going to do this. So I did feel the energy was off. I wasn't, even though I was young, I wasn't stupid. I knew the energy was off, but my overriding parts of me were, but he's the ticket to fame. And I was even told that. And I spoke to my manager at one point and cut the deal with this guy and said to my manager, if that's what fame is, I'd rather go back to my bar job. And he went, what do you mean? I said, well, I love my bar job, so I could just go back to that reality and existence. So then I cut the deal and I left the manager, and things have got great. But when you think that it's a shortcut, I've got to say, I thought it was a shortcut to going to that complete next global level. Like, this is the kind of level we're talking about with this producer. I overrid the fact that he is actually a little bit of a creep.
Yeah, I don't think there's any shortcuts in this industry. I think, you know, if you seriously want to be successful, you have to be prepared to do the work.
That's right.
You can't just be into the outcomes, you know, because I'm sure you've met artists who, you know, they're really hungry for the outcome, but then when they're presented with the work, they're like, oh, I didn't sign up for this. You know, and I think when you are the kind of artist that does the work, you know, it's that thing of, we never feel like we deserve that seat at the table, when actually we're bloody well earning it.
Hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah. And there's no, I love that you say that. It's my friend Lucy Sheridan, who just did the Good Grow, that Instagram course. Actually, I really love her work. She said there's no, she said there's no shortcut to the top. She has a better phrase than that, actually. And I'm like, yeah, actually, I thought that, and my manager thought that this was going to be the next accelerator after, you know, working with 07 and stuff. She's going to New York and having this deal. But actually, A, they were trying to change my lyrics, this team in New York. B, they were like a little bit sleazy and a little bit like that masculine kind of, we're in charge and you're just the pretty singer. And C, I actually came out of it going, hang on, if it's saying I love you now, change, and that's the energy of this project is, oh, isn't Starling great, but now change, then actually I would rather go back to the bar job and organically build. And actually, weirdly, then I did leave management, label, a lot did happen. And then I got more success. I actually got million streams and all sorts of other things afterwards. So it's a slower process, but just a much more rich one. And as you say, I'm laying those foundations rather than thinking, oh, I have to work with the sleaze in order to get fame and money quickly. If that's fame and money, I think they can keep it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that I've come across as well, because I went through music education, I did a college course and then I went on to do a degree. And something that's come up in multiple conversations, particularly with women and trans artists that I've been working with, is you're not taught in the education system how to handle a negative situation. They don't teach you the power of a positive no. They don't give you any.
No, thank you. Yeah.
No resource provided in how to maybe navigate out of an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
We're not empowered to kind of find ways to say, you can't speak to me like that, that's not okay, you can't behave this way, you can't handle me this way, because we feel like we're going to jeopardize the workflow or the opportunity.
This is so true. And I feel like what I teach in Icon and like what I am as a mentor is not just like, here's your strategy, this is how you get to improve and shape up your career, but it's also about how you feel. If you don't feel safe, get the hell out. And I think that, as you're saying, music schools and stuff don't teach that, but also managers. I've got a great manager right now and he would be like, yeah, not that I need it, but he would just look up, you know, it would be a different scenario. But I almost wish, like you're saying, that it was a given that your manager or whoever's putting you in these sessions or these rooms or scenarios or radio interviews is saying that if you don't feel at all safe or happy or good, you leave. I don't care what don't care whether you're on Capital Radio or whether it's a Grammy award-winning producer, whether it's Kanye's team, it doesn't matter. Your sort of pastoral care, your well-being is number one. And I do teach that in Icon, but sometimes it's too little too late, because like you're saying, they've come out of music school, something weird's happened, they've ended up my program because they're like, okay, she knows what she's doing. And then I'm just like, oh God, I wish I could, you know, go back and help the younger girl. Although we do have younger icons, don't we now, like the Abigails, and they're going to be just fine. But I do feel like that mother part of me that's like protective of like, do not fuck with my artists.
I think it's so important that becomes a part of like education, whether that's through an education system or us as mentors sharing that, or as you're saying, managers kind of showing that they really do give a fuck about their artists. Yeah. Because I think the fact that that's not happening, it affects our self-value, because we just kind of like standardize that. We kind of go, oh, well, that's normal, they're just guys, you know. And I've heard that as well as a reaction to that type of behavior. You know, and
you're absolutely right. You become a product, and sorry, I cut you. You become a product, and it's like, yeah, it's great that we're looking at, you know, how much money Millie Blooms can make, or how many streams, or how many records. But at the bottom line is, like we're saying, if that pastoral care isn't there, is that even the word pastoral care? Is that if it's not there, then you feel like a product. It's like it's all the Britney Spears stuff that you're seeing online at the moment. I mean, look at the way she was treated. Look at that kind of. It just was not caring about her. It was just like, this is a product, we're making shit tons of cash. And yeah, that has to end, the conversation. And I think, how do we make changes? We need conversation to happen globally, frequently, all the time.
I think it's going back to a point of, you know, us actually having empathy for the people that are involved in this industry, and not just being so callous about it being this money-making machine, because none of us can sustain running at 100 miles an hour not being well. And no. You know, it's like you talk of Britney Spears, and obviously I don't know the ins and outs of that situation, but it appears from the media that even her family weren't looking out for her well-being. They were, you know, more interested in capitalizing, and all the legal fights that came out of the back end of that, of trying to claim ownership of property, etc.
Absolutely.
Like, at what point is the person a part of this?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That leads me to, is there anything that you haven't done or don't do because you are a woman? And that's not just within your professional industry, that can be an everyday life consideration.
The two immediate obvious things that come to my mind, which I feel you probably heard a lot of, is I don't walk in the dark. And as you know, it's just, clocks turn back. It's becoming winter. And yesterday I went for a walk in my neighborhood and it was 4:30. And as you know, it gets dark here in the winter early. And I suddenly felt, oh God, I can't really carry on walking, although I wanted to, and I'd had a break. I could have carried on, but it was dark. So I feel like there's an unsafety, there's not a freedom that a woman has to kind of just walk alone at night and feel like she can relax and breathe calmly. I feel like my breath changes and I'm a little bit more on edge. The second thing is what I wear. Like, you know, my style, and I just love to wear what the hell I want to wear. And I think I do that in my job as a pop singer and as a mentor. But I think there's areas, and now that I live a little bit out of London, there's areas that I'm conscious of the comments or the eyes on my body, rather than just being free to do what I want to do. And I realize we've got a long way to go with that. That's not just the music industry, that's just life and dynamics with men. But walking out at night and what I wear are the two things. In terms of what I can't do in my industry, I actually feel quite powerful. I don't know if it's just that I'm a little older now, but I kind of do what the hell I want to do. I think judgments that I've had is like I should be thinner or younger or something like that. But it doesn't really, I know it gets to a lot of people, but I think because I've done a lot of inner work, as you know, and the therapy and the coaching and the self-worth piece, I'm kind of like, yeah, maybe there could be Botox happening or a diet happening, but I'm not that bothered about, maybe it'll change. But right now I'm just like, no, I think what I'm saying is of more importance. Not that I'm saying I look bad anyway, but what I'm saying is of more importance than how I look. And what I'm saying is so crystal clear about the way that I empower people through my words and through my lyrics and through my teachings, whether as a mentor or as a singer, that I kind of, it doesn't bother me. So I'd say no, I'm feeling free. But in terms of day-to-day life, there's a lot of work to be done in that. I'm sure you've heard that answer before.
Yeah, you're not the first to say this to me. You know, I spoke to another lady and she said, you know, again, like yourself, I wouldn't walk anywhere late at night on my own.
This is it. Yeah.
And it's like, how do we go around changing that?
Yeah.
Because at the moment, what's happening is we're choosing to not do that thing.
Yeah.
But really, it's about changing the attitude, isn't it? To feel safer in our communities.
Yeah, and it feels like such a big, I shouldn't say it, I should be like, oh, well, we can do this and we can. But that, you know, when you speak, it's like, I was thinking, well, I've even been on a train recently, like for, event or whatever in London, because I live just outside now. And you have to take a train, not a tube, like a train. And it was like 11. And even that felt like people drinking. And it's not actually just now to do with gender discrimination. I'm just talking about as a collective, as a woman in the evening. And like, I'm wearing some fancy outfit and I'm thinking, am I a tart? You know, it can just feel like, you say, instead you take an Uber home or, you know, whatever you do, or you get picked up or whatever. But instead of that, what about changing the whole dynamic so you don't have to keep doing adaptations so that you feel safe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's one thing that you feel that we could be doing to help change this narrative, help change this, you know, this kind of situation?
The dynamic, I think, in the music industry, I think you're doing it. You're changing the narrative through conversation. I hope through my mentorship, I'm doing it. It's not so much about gender, but it's about self-worth. And I feel like when people have more self-worth, they put up with less shit. In terms of walking out at night, I feel like there's a couple of movements online, particularly on Instagram, that I'm feeling like, okay, the word is coming out. Is it going to happen overnight? No. But do we get to kind of, there's little things like on the back of the toilet doors, there's like a number if you don't feel safe. I don't know if you've got that in where you live, but in London, there's a couple of those things. And like, okay, we're starting to get, there's more street lights. We're starting to get, there are changes happening. But I think in terms of what I could physically do, it's having conversations. And honestly, it's doing as much mentoring as my career physically allows to empower the women in my programs to believe in themselves more, have more self-worth, and know to put up with less shit. And I think that feels like there's some change I can do each day.
I love that. I think you're spot on. It's about small things that we can all be doing to help contribute to a wider impact. I think that a lot of people feel quite powerless when they can't make a huge change. But actually it's about all the little pieces that we can each individually be doing that just, you know, long term can make that change. I mean, you and I may not see this change ourselves. It could be a long, you know, a long road.
Yeah,
but
that's it.
It's the hope that we then inspire and empower the younger generations coming up, and we can help be the foundation, you know, of that change for them.
I think that we have to be honest, because you wouldn't want your children's children, or you know what I mean by that, not literally, but metaphorically, your children's children to feel that they can't walk down a street. I mean, how mental, when we think about it, like how mad is that? Like, you know, in terms of your safety and the terms of like potential things that could happen to you. I won't say the R word, but you know, like whether it's that or whether it's just like, that's just crazy. But in terms of the music industry, I think the other thing to address in honesty, and how we do that is a complicated thing, is ageism. So it's not just the discrimination of like the sexualizing and the flirting and all the stuff we've touched on earlier, but it's also like ageism. Like, you'll be amazed, Millie, how many people, and in fact, I think we bonded on this, will come to my program, and one of the first things, they get interviewed in order to get in, and one of the first things they'll say to me if we meet is, which I'm still meeting everybody as they come in, which feels great, is they will say, yeah, there's something about your story and ageism. And I'm like, tell me more. And they're like, well, I'm actually not that age, or I'm not this age, or actually I feel like I've become invisible now I'm 40 or 50. And it makes me so rageful, the idea that you've got a shelf life in the music industry, or that, you know, a woman after a certain age with a wrinkle can't be on main, you know, ITV on Saturday night main television. And it's bullshit, and it just has to stop. And the way that I teach, although I won't go into this too much, is that it isn't, yes, it matters what we look like, we're in entertainment, I get that. But what really it matters is that you attract your tribe. And you've, of course, if you're 40, you wouldn't necessarily want an 11-year-old to be a fan. You might get it, you might inspire them. But the main thing is like speaking to the people that are working through what you're working through, or have the same mission. And then you create a tribe, and then your age becomes irrelevant. However, if you're talking to a major label, or what they call like the male pale men in
Male, yeah.
white male, do you know what I mean? Like, it's when you're talking to those sort of people, I hate to generalize, but they will say, no, it's about your TikTok and your Botox, and you're like, no, that's really not. Like, the most interesting artists are ones that are very clear on what they have to say with their mission, their message, and they're very clear on the tribe. Like Marmite, you don't want to be for everyone. And I feel like when we talk about that, again, the conversation I can have with my platform and the talks that I give, like in London, America, I'm starting to do a lot more in person, is like spreading that word around the self-worth piece, knowing I'm enough, knowing I know what I'm doing. And therefore it doesn't matter about whether you're 12 or whether you're 49. Who cares? You find your tribe and you find your lane. And I think women particularly need to hear that, because otherwise they're in a rush, they feel not good enough, and then they quit. And you don't want to die having never really committed to your career dream.
Absolutely. I think as well, it's really interesting that you touch upon that about self-worth, because I think we have a lot of accountability in changing this narrative ourselves as women by not playing into these roles and these narratives. And when we take that role of being like, you know, I'm a certain age, but I'm telling the public that I'm younger, we're contributing to extending that behavior.
Right.
You know, so we have to, you know, be bold and brave and kind of put our foot down and go, no, actually, you know, I look fucking great. I'm 41. I'm, you know, which is my actual age. And you go, I look fucking good. I put the work in. My work is great. You know, and you push to find the value in yourself and your work through your skill sets and your passion and your drive, and not through, fuck me, I've got a forehead wrinkle. And by the way, I fucking lived life and earned this shit.
Yeah. Boo! But that's also, I don't know, I've just been in Hollywood, as you know, touring the West Coast, and like, I don't know about you, Mills, or if you've been out there yet, but like, I don't want to be a dolly and look like everyone else. Like, I much prefer the whatever you just called it on your forehead to seeing the same frigging, I love women, but come on, like the same sort of stuff in order to be lovable, to be conformed. And they're tiny over there as well, and I'm like, guys, just eat a frigging burger or whatever you want to eat.
Just have a fucking potato.
Have a potato, babes. But I understand why they don't, and I'm never gonna hate on a woman who's had Botox and is on a diet. Like, I get it. It's about lovability, and it feels like life and death. Like, if you're online and you're getting criticized, if you haven't got a lot of that self-worth piece that we've been touching on throughout all of this, no, I mean, I considered it when I was out there. I was like, oh, maybe I should eat a little bit less. Like you're part of an environment and you think, well, you know, everyone's looking like that. So we are human beings, we are packed animals, and it's about, you know, being lovable and being, you know, included or peacocking because you want to be adored, particularly in our industry. But it's about how we do that by holding on to what it is that we really believe in and stand for. And like you said, you stand for that, you've earned that, whereas some people would be like, oh shit, I better, you know. So I think that, honestly, I know I will say the same thing, but I think self-belief and self-worth is the answer to a lot of problems, and there'll be a lot less war because people would see how magical they are and how special they are, rather than thinking that the Botox needle or the diet or starving themselves is making them more lovable. What makes them more lovable is their story and owning their shame and turning it into the shimmer and the magic that's them. But that, you know, it takes a hot minute. It takes a hot minute. It does.
Again, it goes back to that, you know, when you want to do something, you've got to be prepared to invest. And that's not just in a long career, that's in yourself.
That's it.
You know, it's being prepared to do that work on yourself and embrace that change.
I was saying that, oh, sorry, I know we got to end this, but I was saying that, you know, in the Icon call last night, I kind of was almost like, not crying, but like, you know, when you're just like, fucking hell, excuse my French. But I was like, I wish my younger self knew that all the therapy, all my money, even my student loan, like when I was at uni, it would all go to therapy and coaching. I'd spend money on therapy or coaches, even when I really wasn't earning, like in my early 20s, I had nothing. But I wish my younger self knew that even if it doesn't pay off in 6 months, 2 months, whatever it might be, it pays off. And when you do the work, you do become magnetic because you know you've got yourself, you've got your own back.
Yeah. And do you have a positive message to share with anyone watching today?
Oh, I like it. The positive message is it's not all that bad if we know how magical we are. And if we can own our value, we will put up with less manipulation. And that gets to be exciting.